Conlang Review, Episode 5, Nekachti. Before we get into the meat of this episode, I'd like to say that Tuki Tiki is anarcho communist, not actually communist. If you want context for this, go watch the previous episode. It's only 4 minutes long. Nekachti is the second one of Biblioredean's conlangs that I'm reviewing in this series. It's spoken by the Theraean peoples in Biblioredean's Refugium, who live in, you guessed it, the continent of Therea. It started as a dialect of the Theraean language spoken in the port city of Nekachta. However, after Nekachta gained enough prestige to become the capital, it became the prestige language of the whole country. Like I said, like I should have said in the Opalawak episode, Biblioredean puts a lot of effort into the world building and history of his conlangs, and I appreciate him for that. Phonology. These consonants are ma, na, pa, ta, ka, va, sa, ha, sa, cha, la, ra. Now, this inventory isn't particularly interesting, but there are some pretty rare features, like the presence of va, but without its voiceless equivalent fa, and the dental fricative, though its presence is a bit diminished by the fact that English already has it, and so do other widely known languages such as modern Standard Arabic or Ancient Greek. However, this inventory does do something right, and that is that it's minimalistic. If your consonant inventory is minimalistic, that means that you have a pretty well defined aesthetic for your conlang, which I believe is essential. Nekachti's vowels are E, A, O, A. Stress is usually on the third to last syllable, but falls on the penultimate if it's a long vowel. I don't want another auxiliary. I hope I never have to say penultimate again. Anyways, I am really happy because this is not a five vowel system. And also, it's a very similar vowel system to that of classical Nahuatl, one of my favorite languages of all time. So I admit I'm a bit biased. This vowel system is great. The syllable structure in Nekachti is very complex and restrictive, and I definitely can't explain everything in this video. But I'll just give some examples. For any consonant can be in the coda except for r and la, but at the end of a word it can only be ma, na, sa, and ka. Ignore the question mark. Sibilants preceding ra become tha. For example, keats becomes kithe. Fricatives become stops or affricates after nasals. For example, aran becomes arantse. And because of the amount of sound changes that Nekachti has gone through, a lot of sounds behave inconsistently. Ka sometimes but not always disappears intervocalically, and ta sometimes but not always becomes ra between voice segments. Grammar. Nekachti has no simple part of grammar, not even the word order. And trust me, the word order is the simplest part of everything. Word order in Nekachti is usually quite free and is dependent on animacy and focus. But in a vacuum, it's usually SOV. The focus of the sentence usually comes first, followed by the background information and topic, and then the verb. It's only going to get more complicated from here. These are definitely more complicated than the syntax of Nekachti, so let's start with something simple. Nouns are classified as either animate or inanimate and are treated differently based on this. This is one of my favorite features in conlanging, and I tried to incorporate it into one of my first conlangs before I decided it wasn't worth it, and I abandoned it. But maybe one day I'll do a conlang showcase of my own when I actually finish a conlang. Anyways, only animate nouns can be plural or take the definite article, but there is a singulative marker for inanimate nouns to mark exactly one of something. The Nekachti has 7 cases with split ergativity. The nominative case marks animate subjects and direct inanimate objects and inanimate subjects of transitive verbs, while the accusative marks animate objects. The ergative, meanwhile, marks inanimate subjects of transitive verbs. There is also one of my favorite features in any conlang, which is quirky subject. The subjects of certain verbs can take a case other than the nominative or ergative. I see no flaws with this noun system. It's definitely complicated, but it includes a lot of my favorite features. Verbs in Nekachti are definitely the king of complexity in Nekachti grammar. So again, we'll start with something simple. They have polypersonal agreement, marking both subjects, objects, and their number on the verb, and they also mark for animacy and relevancy, or proximate versus obviate. Basically, how relevant the argument is to the conversation. Now, on to the complicated bit. Nekachti has a lot of tense, aspect, mood, and other suffixes which can be attached to verbs. Way more for me to fully explore in this video. Can I explain just how complicated Nekachti grammar is in this regard? If you were to combine every single affix that Nekachti has, mm, all there would be as many as 560 forms for verbs. This is absolutely ridiculous, but also amazing. Biblaridian definitely needs credit for this level of bullshittery. However, Nekachti only allows a maximum of one fully conjugated verb for a sentence, so you don't have to deal with the madness. Writing. Aliens first came across writing when they borrowed the Adun script. However, if you watch Biblaridian's video, you'd know that the Adun script is basically just a drunken mess. Even back then, it was completely nonsensical, having been standardized a millennia ago. It hadn't had no spelling reform since then, so it was wildly inconsistent. However, credit to the scribes, they did manage to engineer the script into a much simpler form, and due to how simple the script was, it's rapidly spread across the whole region, even making it over to the Ntlogwa Islands and adopted by the Ilofli. Again, I'd like to commend Biblaridian for the sheer amount of work that he does on the world building and history of his Conlang. The Nekachti writing system is what Biblaridian describes as a super alpha syllabary, where each syllable is represented by one character. And again, Biblaridian has a lot of history here to explain how this writing system ended up the way it is. When the scribes first came across the Adrian script, they of course noted the madness, but they also noticed that the consonants tended to be consistent as opposed to the vowels. So they kept the consonants, but they created vowel markers, thus creating an abugida. Over centuries of handwriting, though, the vowel markers blended together with the consonants to create ligatures, and eventually, whole syllables were encoded in just one character, creating a super alpha syllabary. Once again, excellent world building by Bibler. In summary, Nekachti is very messy, but in a believable way. The phonology is inconsistent, but it can be explained by sound changes. The grammar is very complicated, but it is also believable. And while the phonology is small, at least it provides the language a very recognizable aesthetic. I can understand why Biblaridian thinks it's his favorite. Now on to the ranking. I really don't have much to explain here, so let's just immediately get into where I'm placing Nekachti. Originally, before I started making this video, I planned to put Nekachti below Okolawak on the list, but as I did my research, I realized that I didn't give Nekachti nearly enough credit for what it does. So yes, Nekachti is the best conlang that I've reviewed so far in this category. Subscribe for more, and I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.